Hello to everyone who hears this. My name is Christina and this is my dad. If you've seen our first video, then you know he and I were separated for over 17 years because of drug addiction, prison, and our dysfunctional family. I'm here beside him right now to tell you a little bit of my side of the story. All I knew when I was little was what my family told me as the years went by, that my father had been on drugs really bad and that he went away and disappeared. I found out he wrote me letters for years, but I wasn't allowed to have any contact with him, and I always wondered why. We're going to tell our stories together now in a series of recovery videos in hopes it will help other families who are broken and need help, just like we did. I need to tell you that he's not only recovered from drug addiction and prison, but he came back for me and has helped me find my own recovery and faith. He not only rescued me from an abusive relationship, but his 12-step recovery experience has also helped me with a smoking and vaping addiction and running from my problems with bad habits like drinking, financial unmanageability, and social media. It's a powerful story of a father's love and our reunion. I mean, how is it that the man everyone said wasn't good enough to be my dad is the same man who's been there for me now more than anyone else? He has helped me raise my two children and has financially supported them because their own father won't. He is a papa now, and my children will tell anyone how they absolutely adore him and his stable home. My dad and I have this recovery sponsorship idea, and we want to share it with men and women in prison as we try to explain how the 12-step treatment process has changed our lives. I'm going to let him begin the video now. I love you, Dad. Take it away.
Thank you, Christina. Hello, this is part 2 of our NA sponsorship video series, and it continues a story of my experience with overcoming addiction by working the 12 steps. My name is Eric, and I'm a recovering addict. And if you've seen our Recovery is Real video, then you've heard how far down I went in an addiction to drugs, alcohol, gambling, nicotine, and much more. As I said before, I started experimenting with hard drugs when I was 15, but that's not the beginning of the story. I challenge anyone watching this that the first decision on a journey towards recovery is questioning, what is causing me problems in my life? Am I an addict? Do I think I may need help with something? If so, do I believe there is anything that can ever help me change my life? And again, if you're watching this from inside a prison, I've been right there with you. There was no way for me to deny it anymore. I needed help, and it seemed like I was at the end of my rope. I got 34 years at trial because a jury also saw how badly I needed some help, and it saved my life. If you are sitting in a prison right now, you may need help too. And since I hope you decide to get it, I'd like to help you if I can. Before we start into the first step, I want to show you a picture of 14-year-old Eric. Back when I was a straight A student, pretty good kid that everyone said was smart, but if you look closely, I'm holding my mouth oddly because in the winter of 1984, I was in a terrible sledding accident, breaking my jawbone and knocking out several teeth. I did not smile in this picture because I didn't want anyone to see the damage I'd done to my face, but also because I had learned how to become numb. I'd been given painkillers that they said would help me through the painful post-implant and false teeth surgeries, and I still remember how they made me feel, which was amazing. For years and years, doctors gave out bottles full of these magic pills that seemed to fix anything painful, without considering the long-term impact these addictive substances may have on someone. You could get them everywhere. I mean, it seemed like everyone had some in their medicine cabinet. This is where the term opioid epidemic comes from. I am a victim of the opioid epidemic at 14 years old, which eventually led to a lawsuit and a financial judgment that bankrupted the pharmaceutical company as they had to admit that they offered doctors incentives to prescribe these pills that they knew were very addictive. In the next few years, this picture became the story of my teenage life. I'd quit high school to use and deal drugs. My parents couldn't do anything with me, and I was often found crashed at whoever's house I was using with the night before. I became a binge addict, meaning I'd try to live a normal life, but once I started using drugs or alcohol, I just keep on binge using them until I either financially or physically could not get high anymore, usually between 2 to 3 days. Then I'd sleep it off, try to sober up. I'd go back to work and give everyone in my life all the excuses that an addict will use. I'm sorry. I'm going to straighten up. I'm not going to do those hard drugs anymore. I promise. I'll stop. I'm sorry. Again. Within this treatment process of hundreds of questions, I was able to see how the path of my addiction began. How do any of you watching know what's caused the major problems in your lives? Because if I hadn't made an inventory of my entire life, there would be no way for me to understand how I ended up losing everything over and over and over, besides putting myself in the position to do almost 13 years in prison. It doesn't end there, though, because I eventually learned why I hated myself so much that I'd rather self-destruct with drugs and lose everything than feel the feelings that any addict will run from. But hang on, it's not the time to share all of that yet, because that's further along in the treatment process. So back to the beginning. Anyone who wants to seek recovery from any kind of addiction or any type of self-destructive habit they want to stop doing, we must start with the first step. And it's been called one of the most difficult steps because it not only requires us to stop doing whatever it is that's harming us long enough to admit we have something that makes our life unmanageable, but we must face all the issues that keep us from being able to manage our lives. This is very hard to do, and it's why not many people try it. No matter how bad it gets, most addicts will always try to make it seem like we can manage everything in our lives all by ourselves somehow, eventually. Am I right? Even in prison for the first 5 years, I still made myself believe I had all the answers for my life. I just needed to get free so I could start over again. Thank goodness I got a long prison sentence because it finally helped me realize it was time for some new answers, which is why I tried this long, difficult process. Please trust me when I say this. The steps can help anyone with anything that they wish they could stop doing, or it can help us figure out the things that we may want to start doing. Either way, they can change lives for the better. And isn't that something everyone wants for our lives to get better? The answers or the solutions to recovery from any kind of addiction is found in the principles of the 12 steps. I wish I could ask all of you watching right now, have any of you ever tried to work the 12 steps before? Many of you may be wondering, what are the 12 steps and how does someone work them? I relied on this evidence-based workbook. It was written by hundreds and hundreds of addicts from all over the world, and it's brought answers and relief to thousands of desperate, defeated, and dying addicts just like me for years. There are some suggestions for success, though, and they begin almost on the first page. There's probably only one inappropriate way to use these guides: alone. We can't overemphasize the importance of working with a sponsor and working the steps. In fact, in our fellowship, a sponsor is considered, first and foremost, a guide through the 12 steps. If you haven't yet asked someone to sponsor you, please do so before beginning these guides. This is the reason I'm making these videos for addicts in prison, because for years there has not been access for inmates for the NAAA sponsorship that all treatment professionals recommend for successful recovery. It doesn't have to take therapists, not counselors, not doctors or medications. I mean, there are a lot of smart people today who think they can fix addicts, but if they've never been where we've been, they cannot know how to help us back. Am I right? The realistic solution to recovery is simply one addict that can relate with another addict, and they're called a sponsor. Someone who's discovered how the steps can help change someone's life, sharing their experience, their strength, guidance, and hope. That's it. It is that simple. I came back from a living hell: drugs, alcohol, prison, tobacco, gambling, on and on. I'm just going to try to explain in these videos how it worked for me. This is another definition of recovery. It means that we finally learn how to care enough about ourselves that we don't let habits or addictions bring harm to us, our lives, or the people we have in our lives. The wording of the first step says, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, I noticed something right away. It didn't say drugs. It says addiction, and I started wondering, do I have other problems? I mean, I'd always told myself, if I could just get off the drugs, I'm going to be fine. Well, not being the smartest burnout in the world, this was the time in my life when I began using a dictionary to fully understand the exact meanings of every word that was contained in each step, because maybe I did have other problems I didn't know about. And I say this because right from the beginning, the first word, admitted. When I asked myself what it meant, or if I ask you right now, what does admitted mean? Because for me, sometimes in my brain, the definition of a word is that same word. Like admitted to me means that I admit something. I could easily see I needed a dictionary to understand words I'd used all my life. So I challenge anyone watching, get a dictionary today and learn the full meaning of words. Don't just think you probably already know. I know this may have been part of what saved my life, just by learning what the recovery words even mean. Like the word admitted. Admitted means to confess something to be true, but it's typically with reluctance, because most of the time, no one really wants or likes to admit anything, especially if something is wrong. Am I right? Not to anyone, but especially not to ourselves. The painful situations of my own life forced me right here to acknowledge the truth. I needed to confess to myself all the things that are true without reluctance. I didn't need to worry about what anyone else thought about my life at all. I just needed so badly for my life to get better. So I began to try to do what the definition said do. I was ready to confess something to myself, even though I wasn't sure what it was yet. Next is the word powerless. Powerless means without the power or the ability to do something. So essentially, it means that just by ourselves, we may not have the power or the ability to behave or to do or to act over whatever it is that is currently causing us problems. So I had to admit to myself that I must not have the power on my own to overcome my problems or behaviors. This is a difficult thing. I mean, I feel like I'm a strong person. Why would I not have the power over all the things in my life? But the evidence was undeniable. My life was a mess. My thinking and behaviors were obviously causing me problems. So I confessed it to be true that I didn't have the power all by myself to solve all my problems, whatever they are. Then the words, our addiction. This is where I learned a lot, because addiction is a complicated issue. You see, addiction is now classified medically as a disease, meaning doctors and medical journals all recognize the disease of addiction similar to the other diseases that can kill people every day. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes. Not really sure what the causes or cures are, just like addiction. Why would someone use drugs until they die or go to prison? It's not an easy answer. If all diseases had simple cures and easy answers, well, then everyone would be fixed, right? I really like how this workbook explains many things. What makes us addicts is the disease of addiction, not the drugs, not our behavior, but our disease. There is something within us that makes us unable to control our use of drugs, and this same something also makes us prone to obsession and compulsion in other areas of our lives. How can we tell when our disease is active? When we become trapped in obsessive, compulsive, self-centered routines, endless loops that lead nowhere but to physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional decay. You know, it feels like to me all my life I've been addicted to something. It feels I have constantly gone from one thing to another. I guess thinking I'd find happiness in my behavior somehow, using things or habits, I guess, to feel better or maybe just different than I was already feeling, like smoking cigarettes, playing lottery tickets, alcohol, chasing money, sex, drugs, slot machines, pornography, different drugs, vaping, spending money, food, endlessly looking for something. But for some reason, I couldn't see that I'm likely to look in all the things that will eventually cause me harm. Why does anyone do this? I know why I do it now, but I did not know before I sought help. The last half of the first step's definition says that our lives had become unmanageable. It was such a relief to me to reach the surrender I found when I got here, because reality hit me in the face when I was studying these words. I cannot manage my own life. Anyone else out there ever been unhappy or even miserable because of something you've done or the way your life is going? Or have you felt like that our lives had become unmanageable? Because I know the feeling well. I spent almost 13 years in an actual prison, but my life has been unmanageable for many other years. These questions would eventually seem like a college course to me as I realized, just like learning something in school, I can get smarter. I can learn how to manage my life. I can stop harming myself and others, and I can finally know some peace and some happiness. This first step not only saved my life from a terrible drug abuse problem, but it still helps me today in many other areas of life. Anytime I recognize a painful aspect happening to me, I remember some things I told myself because it starts with the understanding of the wording of the step. I confess it to be true, without reluctance, that I do not have the power all by myself to manage my own life. And whatever the disease of addiction is, it is affecting me by making my life unmanageable. So in reality, it's pretty simple. I finally surrendered to the fact that I don't have all the answers I need for my life. I need help. I question anyone watching this right at this moment. Do you think you have all the answers for your life right now? If you do not, where do you intend to find the answers you will need to get to where you would like to get in life to be happy? Where do you look for answers right now? Do you rely on answers you already have? Have you ever thought about asking yourself 600 or 700 questions? And could you just consider for 1 minute that those answers may be the answers you've been looking for? I could hardly believe it myself how this thing actually works, because you mean to tell me that the answers I've been needing all my life were somehow hidden inside of me, just waiting for me to ask myself the question? That's pretty deep to think recovery could be that simple. I want answers, and answers require a question to be asked first. I like the word happy I mentioned just a second ago. Well, what makes me happy? You see, I know now because I've asked myself all the questions. Happy doesn't have one answer. It's not that easy. The meaning of happy for me now is a bunch of answers to a bunch of questions. Does that make sense? I'm not sure about something right now, and what would be the best direction for these NA recovery sponsorship videos? Should I take the time to go through some of these questions from the first step? Because there are quite a few of them. And I suppose I could even share some of my answers from the years I was in prison, because I have all of my step work. I kept it all of it. I have it here. Or would those of you listening rather I simply go ahead to step 2? Regardless of which direction we go from here, I want to tell you that I'm going to work the steps again in my life as I make these videos, not on drugs or alcohol or any of the other damaging habits from the last time. This time, I'm willing to admit other problems. I'm going to be working the steps on relationships, social media and my cell phone, pleasure, and money. I have some unmanageable problems right now, and I'm substituting these words in the place of our addiction, as each of these are making my life feel like it's out of control. So maybe I can explain that better when the time comes. The decision to surrender and give up control of my life is one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I've always considered myself to be a strong man, and letting go seemed like it would cause my life to fall apart. But then I realized my life had already fallen apart, so what did I have to lose? To anyone listening right now, do you have your lives under control, all on your own? Could you just consider that working the 12 steps might be the solution that you need? I challenge you all to surrender to change. Decide for yourself that you need help, and let's take this journey together with this process. It starts with admitting the first step's definition. I confess it to be true, without reluctance, that I do not have the power all by myself to manage my own life, and whatever the disease of addiction is, it is affecting me by making my life unmanageable. I will ask the NA facilitators to help me figure out which direction their group thinks the videos need to go. Do we stay on the first step and go through my answers, or do we move on to the second step? I'm so grateful for the relief I've found in my own life, and I hope each of you finds your own recovery that can bring the happiness we all seek. We will have another video coming soon. Thank you all for listening.